It is Tuesday, the 17th of October 2017, and it is block height 490,364. Hello, hello. Shinobi, come in. What you saying?
I'm saying stuff.
You're saying stuff about, I bet you got a rant or two in you today, I'm betting.
Oh, yeah.
With what's coming up. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Rick. Come in, Rick.
Yeah. Hey, everybody. I'm here.
Good, good. You saying yes to X, Rick? What are you saying?
Oh, no. Definitely not. No 2X. That's all right. It's been one of those mornings, for sure.
Dude, thanks so much for spending so long on the graphic today. That was really fiddly work. We didn't like it when it was like in the image when we were sharing it, but then when it was up on Twitter, everyone was like, this is great. It looks really good. So thanks so much for that. It's really good.
No problem.
And Janine.
Guten Tag.
Guten Tag. Yes, yes. Just in the other room, in fact. We're both in Berlin still. And Aknix from the Bitcoin bus.
Hey, some technical audio issues on my end, but this seems to be working, so let's roll with this, maybe.
Yeah, it sounds good, man. We're not getting any echo at all. Sounds really, really good. All right, let's get rolling. So we talked about a hack attack yesterday on your Wi-Fi, the drive-by Wi-Fi, and today it's all about the ROCA. Who wants to take it? I mean, I read it all myself, but if somebody else wants to come in. Come on.
Anybody?
Who did that homework?
I thought for sure Shinobi or Aknix was going to take this one. It's highly technical, but I mean, yeah, it looks awful.
Well, I mean, I just had my arms full of cable spaghetti trying to figure out some audio issues, so I was not able to do as much research.
All right. We'll have this stupid one. Me try to break it down. So effectively, there is a company that was producing an RSA library to be used in conjunction with trusted computing platforms and other special purpose hardware for generating RSA keys. And there was a bug in this library, which pretty much makes it very easy to refactor the private key from the public key. And this pretty much means that there are probably thousands upon thousands upon thousands of RSA keys out there right now that are trivially brute forceable. And like obviously that's going to depend on how bad the problem is with each generated key and the length of the key. But I think you guys can see why the title of today's show is what it is.
Yeah,
it definitely feels like everything's broken. Go on, Rick.
Rektoberfest.
Rektoberfest. It is
brilliant.
Rektoberfest.
Yeah, I was just gonna say how it's like the Wi-Fi one day, and now today it's this RSA and the key signatures and everything. And looking into it, I did write down a couple of notes on this, just how the flaw turns the possibility of decrypting these keys, if they're done correctly, it should take several quadrillion years to decrypt these things, where with this flaw, it goes down to 100 years max. Half of that is how much it usually takes on average. And just that this thing really seems kind of targeted the way that it's distributed, still a real fluid story. We don't know how much everything it affects. And it's just, it looks like we're still just, we haven't got full information on it yet.
Well, the biggest thing it affects is the Estonian identity cards, and Estonia has, as a precaution, taken off its online database for the public keys. The hack really centers around the way the RSA key pair generates its primes, the specific structure of the way the primes are created, which makes it possible for an attacker in an offline state, so they don't need any direct connection. That's the difference for yesterday's. Yesterday's was a Wi-Fi attack where you required proximity to the victim. In this one, you do not. You only require the public key, and I think it also helps to have the fingerprint, and you can then do some factoring, and you can figure out the private key from that. That should not be possible. So I will highlight some of the more salient points here. it's worth pointing out that to take on these hacks, for anything with a bit key length of more than 2048, actually you're going to be spending around $40,000 to pull off this hack, and still possibly waiting up to 100 years before you actually figure out the private key. But if you've only got a 1,000-bit key or so, then it's you know, you can hire an Amazon instance and only spend $76 or so. But obviously, this does need to be sorted out. Even $40,000 in 100 years just is not up to the standards that we are expecting from public key infrastructure, which right now, after the whole Heartbleed thing, just looks like an absolute mess. And you know, that was largely thanks to the Bitcoin developers, right, Shinobi? They actually found one of the exploits and reported it when they were working on the Bitcoin code. So this does need testing. So this does not affect things like mobile phones. It doesn't affect your laptops, and it probably doesn't affect the hardware secured devices that are used inside of data centers. It more likely affects things with those little chips in, so things like the Yubikey. In fact, we had an announcement today from Yubikey. HSM's you know, hardware secured modules. Let me just show you the Yubikey.
Yeah, it affects
okay, so here we go.
Yubikey 4.
Yeah, well, Yubikey 4 version 4.2.6 to 4.3.4. And mostly it's going to be the PIV smart card OpenPGP with the onboard RSA key generation. But these are ones that I'm showing you here. Yubikey Neo, Neo N, the UTF security key, the blue one, and the Yubikey 4 with version 4.3.5 or higher, not affected, no action required. Also worth pointing out that Trezor is not affected because they don't use the Infineon library, so I think they don't even use the hardware either. So they don't use either. And yeah, it's pretty bad. I also put in the description, you can follow along with all our news stories, definitions of some key terms you're going to need in order to read some of that literature. Rick mentioned about, you know, one day this and the next day that. It's worth pointing out that a lot of this stuff is already known. When researchers find these bugs, they have, you know, there's a certain duty of care that they have, that they report it to the primary stakeholders, the people that actually implemented it. Would have gone to the company like Inferion, who make this software or this hardware, and they actually report to them first to give them enough opportunity to put in any kind of, you know, preventative measures to make sure that people are safe. And then usually these days, a website is created, a domain name is bought, a logo is formed, a whole, you know, viral marketing campaign is built around it. And then later on, it will be put out into the public domain, and the press releases will go out. And eventually it will normally be, you know, talks about a conference, right? It's normally to promote some kind of speech. And then that speech will actually, you know, often have the full paper, if there is a paper involved, and then they'll go through and have a slide deck, and it'll be death by PowerPoint, you know, at the end of the day. So it's not as if a lot of people in the know, it's not like, you know, this is just one day apart. We learned about Wi-Fi yesterday, and now we learn about this. These were vulnerabilities that were already known about in the industry.
Yeah, it looks like we might start seeing that fallout, you know, coming up here in the next month or so, and maybe even over years, really.
Yeah, this is pretty dire, and it certainly makes you, it certainly sort of has this sort of existential crisis for anyone who works in security, and particularly if you're people like me who teach other people how to implement security. It's just really embarrassing, because then you've got to explain why it doesn't work, and everyone loses hope. But what else are you going to do? Like, what else do you have to fall back on? Nothing. I mean, this is it. Like, this is security as we know it. There isn't anything better than this. Right. So I feel a monkey rant coming on. I'm about to trigger Shinobi. Don't look at the screen. Just try to breathe. Just try to breathe. So there's a really cool website called bitcoin.com, which is like the headquarters of all things Bitcoin. And it's where often a lot of people come when they don't know very much about Bitcoin. They've only just learned about it. And they think, oh, bitcoin.com, this must be the company that runs that newfangled digital currency I've been hearing so much about.
And this is really that Satoshi said had nothing to do with the Bitcoin project, by the way.
Did he really? Did he really? Well, anyway,
yes, he did. They quote on Bitcoin Talk.
Well, you go get the quote, and I'll post it up on the screen. But I will say they've done this fine job, really, of, I'm not quite sure what this is. It doesn't even have an author.
Triggered.
It doesn't even have an author. Okay, so it doesn't have an author. Fine. Okay. All right. Go on. He's triggered. Go on.
All right. I have to go on a long rant. Forgive me for the mess of organization here, but this article is complete delusional bullshit. I'm going to start off with the top here. This article will explore the different forks of Bitcoin and make the case for why Bitcoin Cash is most aligned with the original system laid out in the white paper. Okay, that is a completely subjective opinion there. He goes on, whoever wrote this article, to paint a case of how Bitcoin had no maximum transactions sizes, no limits to what it could process or limitations on the size of the transactions. That is bullshit. We have what is called the dust limit on the peer-to-peer network, which is set up to specifically prevent transactions from creating outputs that are uneconomical to spend in terms of the fees. That was put there by Satoshi himself. And I'm going to cite a lot of things. I will do my best to get all these sources together to link in the video. Satoshi himself directly told a user when they were complaining about fees, well, if you don't like paying the fee, you can run a node, in this context a miner, and maybe one day collect a 0.4 Bitcoin fee yourself. So even Satoshi himself, when met with a user who was complaining about the fees, essentially told him, tough shit, that's how it works. In the bottom section below, when he is quoting Satoshi talking about the bandwidth usage and how that compares to HD movies and moving them around. Okay, this was a statement made by Satoshi assuming that there were cryptographic fraud proofs, that there was a compact way to prove to a non-full node that all of the system's rules are being followed, that the inflation supply is not being cheated, that anything sent to them is a valid unspent transaction output. And guess what? We don't have those. He then goes on to say, eventually a small group of programmers calling themselves, air quotes, Bitcoin Core. Well, here's a history lesson for everybody. The name Bitcoin Core was proposed by Mike Hearn. It was supported by Gavin Andreessen. The developers that he is trying to implicate in this were actually against this name because, in their words, it implied that you needed it. Because they had a very big issue with a name that implied they were in some central point of control or a necessity for the system. He then goes on to say that the reason merchant adoption started tapering off was because fees went up on the network. This is complete and utter horseshit. Merchant adoption in Bitcoin started going down after the initial boom because, aside from internet businesses where anybody in the world can patronize them, all of the physical businesses accepting Bitcoin were in places with unbelievably sparse concentrations of Bitcoiners. Put simply, there are not enough Bitcoiners in the world for it to make sense in most places, unless those places have an inordinately high concentration of Bitcoin users, to accept Bitcoin, because the overhead of actually accepting Bitcoin is not going to be worth it with the insanely small amount of people who will actually show up at your business and spend Bitcoin. So far, this entire article is complete horseshit. He then goes on to say that the original chain which exists right now is, air quotes, Segwit Core. This is delusional. He is simply playing branding games to try to equivocate the original chain, which still exists as a derivative fork in the way that Bitcoin Cash is. This is being done to try to put them on even footing as to what is Bitcoin. That is complete nonsense. Bitcoin Cash is a derivative fork that forked away from Bitcoin. The Bitcoin we have right now with Segwit active on it is Bitcoin. It is not Segwit Bitcoin. It is not Segwit Core. It is Bitcoin. And then this graph that Chris is showing here is a completely ridiculous bastardization of reality, because it completely neglects, and I'm sure you've seen the corrected version on Twitter, to show that the signature data both has a connection to the rest of the transaction and a linkage in the block header. It is not removed in any way whatsoever. It is simply reorganized is committed to in the block header. All of those transactions are still there. All of those transactions still have signatures. You still have to check these signatures for that transaction to be valid. The only difference now is that with the data optimized the way it is, you can deal with these two separate parts of a transaction in a different way. That is complete and utter fucking nonsense. Now to move down to these fork things, these different graphics of derivative forks. What is this nonsense with the original Bitcoin chain, low fees, irreversible, fast transactions, and then below, original Bitcoin chain, 2017, high fees, reversible? What's that? Well, the argument that he's attempting to make that I can see is because we have features like replace by fee, a transaction is reversible. Well, guess what, Roger? Wake up and smell reality. A transaction is reversible always until it is cemented in an actual block. It doesn't matter whether replace by fee is active on the chain you are talking about. If it is not in a block, it can be reversed. It can be double spent. Replace by fee being an active feature on that chain has absolutely nothing to do with whether or not double spending is possible. It simply formalizes it and gives miners and other node operators the ability to actually see that a user might do something like that and to keep an eye out and manage their mempool differently. When he's talking about more Bitcoin forks to come, even below this, well, he's again playing games with graphics here with this irreversible column. No, it's irreversible or not irreversible on the original Bitcoin chain. Well, yeah, it's reversible if it's not in a block, because if it's not in a block, it's not confirmed. This goes back again to the replace by fee and this delusional narrative that if you just simply get rid of replace by fee, that zero comp transformations are secure. They are not. They can be double spent no matter what. And as a side note, replace by fee is actually an iteration by Peter Todd of a feature proposed by Satoshi himself. Now again, the average confirmation times, 15 minutes for Bitcoin Cash. Well, last I checked different data sets, it was more like 35 minutes, I believe, in my experience, hours for Bitcoin Cash transactions to confirm. I literally waited hours. So the injury is just a sociopathic way to attempt to manipulate people with colors that our subconscious reacts to. Right, complete and utter horseshit. This entire thing is nothing but Roger abusing the brand associated with Bitcoin.com to mislead people, to lie to people, to scam people by outright misrepresenting complete and utter bullshit as reality. End rant.
Wow. Okay, everyone clap. Very good. You feel better? Is that like a catharsis?
Yeah, but I'm still angry.
Someone in the chat box said that a shinobi rant a day keeps the doctor away.
Well, it keeps Roger away, I think.
For sure.
It does. And let me show you that quote from Satoshi saying that, yeah, he was talking about the registration of the .com. I think somebody like snapped that up right after he got the .org, right? And so that is that. And Charlie Lee was bemoaning and saying that people are going to be misled by this, you know, as new users come in. And I think we can all agree with that. And
can you show the correct? Yeah. So I thought that was really important to show because the Bitcoin.com article like severely misunderstood what SegWit even is. And so this was a correct graph by David Harding. You should note the caption below it where this explains what SegWit actually is and how it works. And it says each block header still includes a cryptographically secured reference to all of the transaction data in that block, but encumbrances, public keys, are referenced separately from the witnesses. That's why it's called segregated witness. so that the software can use each part independently. This fixes unwanted transaction malleability that allowed anyone who modified a witness in an unconfirmed transaction to break chains of transactions like those illustrated, which severely limited Bitcoin's use in smart contracts and made wallet development more difficult than necessary.
Yeah, Segway's a pretty complicated tech. You think, it's not that easy for these new users to get a hold of it. And then especially when they get directed to bitcoin.com thinking they're going to get solid information, it's these sort of propaganda things that come out. It's really aggravating. I can kind of feel, Shinobi there. I feel the same way. I'm glad he got it out. Hopefully, the people will get informed.
I don't know where Chris went.
I was about to say it. Let's see. Sorry, folks. We're getting some technical difficulties handled. There he is.
I'm back. Got kicked off.
It's all right. We were just talking about how complicated Segway is, and it's easy to get confused with these kind of articles running around.
Someone said in the chat the other day that Bitcoin's really good at making smart people look stupid. I like that.
Yeah, that's right.
I like that a lot. And I feel like as Bitcoin develops as well and more features get added to it, the more and more smart people get sucked into this kind of vortex of like, oh shit, I just spoke when I should have just kept my mouth shut because now I've made myself. And then the problem is they double down on the stupid, right? Because they don't want to like admit they were wrong. It really, I feel like this whole industry is like a battle between ego and ideas, ego and truth, or something like purity, something like that. Because I feel like the people that have outed themselves as just, idiots so far are the people that I think fell victim to ego first and foremost. It wasn't just a misunderstanding. It was something like, this has to be my version of Bitcoin. This has to be something, something about me, or whether it's that guy who always talks about gold and he can't stand Bitcoin, and he'll never ever concede it, because gold has just been his thing, and he's just always promoted gold and silver his entire life, and he just doesn't want to give it up.
Yeah, you get attached to those things, especially you got that .com. You can't give up your name. Oh man.
Yeah, that .com though. That is real. So Max Kaiser in the chat just before I got kicked off said Feathercoin is the real Bitcoin. Damn right, sir. Damn right. And I think somebody said, was it Down and Under? Somebody with a name above as below said that Bitcoin.com is really BitcoinCash.com. Good point. They should probably just rename it BitcoinCash.com. But I think the whole Segway core thing was really this retaliation for the BCH, BCC, Bcash, Bitcoin Cash whole fiasco. I think that was just like petty kind of like, well, you did it to us, so we're going to do it to you. We're going to like try and rebrand it, except nobody's going to listen to this thing. Like,
what I think is funny is that when they were describing what Bitcoin Cash was, they said that it goes by the BCC ticker, which is still being used by BitConnect, by the way. So that's going to be fun.
The branding wars.
Except nobody cares about BitConnect. I mean, where does it trade? Like Yobit or somewhere?
Well, no one cares about it, but apparently a bunch of people were mistakenly buying it because they got confused.
Well, no, they weren't mistakenly. They were buying it because they thought other people would be stupid enough to buy it as well, on the speculation. It was just one of those stupid altcoin pumps, I think. And this also crept into the news desk. Small miners who might be hurt by larger blocks don't exist. And it's a post on our BTC that was tweeted out by Jihan Wu. And I don't know, this is a lot of bullshit. I don't know, I don't even feel like reading it. It's basically a big straw man, as far as I can tell, where he takes an argument that apparently small blockers make to say that if you implement big blocks, it's going to centralize the network because it's going to, obviously put more stress on the nodes. But then he tries to make it all really about mining and how miners spend so much on mining equipment anyway that it doesn't really matter. $20,000 is really just a worst case scenario, and it's just a rounding error really once you've taken into consideration the facilities you're going to need, and the air conditioning and the cooling and everything. But one thing I did find quite interesting was that somebody said we're living in a post-factual time. Facts no longer count. I mean, you might say that these are kind of alternative facts. I think there was a phrase that was used by the POTUS right now. And somebody even compared like the so-called small blocker camp in quotes as like, I don't know, anti-vaxxers. I see things like flat earthers as well. Where's the flat earthers one? Yeah, flat earth level of insanity. It's insane, almost like flat earth, but like flat earth level insanity. So how does it feel to
wasn't
be
it somebody in RBC that was saying satellites don't exist because the Earth was flat when Blockstream launched?
Yeah, maybe, but that doesn't mean that they all think the same thing. Like just because one person said it.
I had to make the obvious thing.
Well, they think we're crazy for wanting to confirm the chain, you know. Like they just didn't even bring the word node up in that at all. Like, yeah, you're right. It was a straw man thing, and it's something where when I read it, it's just like, wait a minute, this argument's being framed in a way that's not even bringing in what's relevant.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. All right, let's go over to Segway 2x update, and the update is that OKEx are implementing a Segway policy that's Segway 2x policy that's very similar to what Bitfinex did. So essentially, they will be putting in a chain split token for the hard fork, the terms of which are broadly similar to the way Bitfinex's were, which reported on a week or two ago. And the difference is, of course, that BTC, the incumbent chain, the current one, is, of course, the underlying for most of their trading pairs, right? So they're not trading against the dollar. You're trading against Bitcoin. And so the split token will be named, for Segway 2x, will be named BT2. And the regular chain, the current original chain, as they're calling it, that's the terminology, original chain, will be named BT1, so the same as Bitfinex. And then October 17th, that was today, OKEx will support the conversion between BTC and BT1 and BT2. That can be then converted, and it can go back vice versa. If the hard fork doesn't occur, OKEx will cease trading in BT1 BTC and BT2 BTC. The value of BT2 will turn to 0. So that is the Segway 2x chain, and users can convert their BT1 to Bitcoin BTC at a ratio of 1:1. If the hard fork occurs, OKEx will release BT2 based on users holding amount of BTC at a ratio of 1:1. In addition, all BT1 will be converted to BTC at a ratio of 1:1. Now, since BTC is the base currency of OKEx, there might be a short period of price fluctuation on BTC pairs, and they advise user discretion. So that is it. What do you want to make of that?
That the people running that company aren't a bunch of morons.
Yeah. I was really, really happy to see that. That was really good. I'm just seeing what the chat thinks.
I think we might see some more dumps. I don't know. Like those futures, they sort of seem to help price it in.
Yeah, indeed. But I don't know. I don't know whether or not this fork's going to happen. Quite honestly, I think a lot of people that are cashing out now are doing it because they think, well, if they're dumping their Segway 2x ahead of time, they clearly think that this is the opportunity, right? I just get to make some free money right now, and then if it doesn't happen, well, I've just made free money. You know?
Yeah. It's an interesting way to go about it for sure. Just like go ahead and dump it now because it might not happen.
Indeed. Monkey, any thoughts, or you will rant it out? Do you want to just take a lie down or something?
I have a feeling that we're going to be seeing a lot of different no 2x statements coming out from different segments of the community and businesses over the rest of this month. Because when you really get down to, that's another outright lie from the Bitcoin.com article. He says that there is support from a super majority of businesses and a super majority of miners. Well, just F2 pool backing out with the miners not signaling right now proves that's false, objectively speaking. And in terms of the businesses, it's really only Coinbase, BitPay, and Shapeshift as far as really big businesses, and a lot of other DCG companies. Most of the actual relatively big businesses in this space, they didn't really sign it. Signed the agreement, Bitstamp didn't sign the agreement, Bitfinex didn't sign the agreement, and a whole slew of other smaller exchanges and service providers. So the idea that you can call the supporters that it has right now a supermajority is just outright delusional.
Yeah, well, there was one sentence that they signed. And then there ended up being a document, and then everyone who signed it went, "Oh, really? Is that what we signed? Okay, all right." So, who can talk about LedgerX? Because all I heard was that there was an API that was put up. That's the next story. This tweet from Ben Davenport, and so it's just like this one. This is it. Data.ledgerx.com. Is that it?
One trade.
One trade. There was a single trade, and the market did nothing. Well, actually, the market dumped a bit today. Not too much, but a little bit.
Yeah, I mean,
who put this on the news desk? It's a decentralized news broadcast. Come on.
It's a person.
All right.
I'll admit that I threw it up there because it seems like one of those things everybody's like waiting for LedgerX to go on because they're seeing it as the big entry for, it's one of the first doors for Wall Street investments, which, I mean, there are, things like DGC out there that they could invest in it already. And I guess, it's out now. Like you're saying, I just know about its API and I looked at it and it seemed to be something a couple of people were talking about on Twitter, but it certainly does just look like, I don't know, small potatoes. I don't know. Certainly doesn't look like Wall Street level volume.
Well, I mean, it's going to take some time because, this is, it's a derivatives exchange, but it's got to be fully collateralized. So you actually have to have the total amount of cash on hand when you make a bid. You have to have the total amount of Bitcoin on hand when you put up an ask. And so I think it's going to take some time before like all of the people who would qualify to use the platform actually start, making arrangements and getting their assets organized, because you can't just go in and just start bidding on nothing. Like people actually have to put the Bitcoins up on the exchange. And I think, at least in terms of a lot of old school hodlers in the ecosystem, they're probably going to want to hear more about security setups, like the entire back end before they're just going to throw Bitcoins on a brand new exchange. I mean, especially given that it's set up by people who haven't really had a lot of experience with such operations in the space.
Yeah, certainly should probably give it more time before I actually start judging the volume on that thing.
Yeah, indeed. All right, moving on to, this is Karl Torpey, who is one of our favorite journalists here at Block Digest. And he has been going through some of the old messages from Satoshi on the forum. And you can see it at the Nakamoto Institute. If you just put that into your favorite search engine, put in the full Satoshi, and it will come up with all of Satoshi's old posts, all nice and neatly in chronological order. So here's one about thing I learned. He says Satoshi used the term sidechains back in 2010 in reference to merge mining. That was with the BitDNS. And he posts down, he hasn't even finished yet, by the way. He's still going. This is a mega thread. I tweet out at Mr. Chrysalis if you want to see the full thread. Also, actually, of course, linked in the description below. And this one on while Bitcoin users might get increasingly tyrannical about limiting the size of the chain, so it's easy for lots of users and small devices. So yeah, this was about the block size, talking about it early on, and that time when Satoshi warned against WikiLeaks using and bringing unneeded attention to Bitcoin. Of course, that's a famous one that most people know about. And he says, I didn't know this. Both Jeff Garzik and Amir Tarki also warned against WikiLeaks use of Bitcoin in the same thread. I didn't know that either.
Yeah, I actually just sent you a link as well. Satoshi is actually where the idea of payment channels came from as well. which is, I would really like to get a chance to call Roger out in person on a lot of this shit, because like the way he talks about RBF and side chains and Lightning Network and all these things developers are working on in this space, as if they just swooped in, hijacked things, and took things in a completely different direction. All of these different second layer solutions and technologies people are working on are literally all derived from ideas that Satoshi himself directly put out into the public space. So I really want to know where he gets this idea that there is some group of nefarious outsiders that swooped in and took everything in a wildly different direction. Because, last I looked, when I got into this space, I dove through Satoshi's readings. I didn't just read a 18-page or whatever white paper and then decided that I knew everything that had ever gone through Satoshi Nakamoto's mind. I actually poured through the forums. I read other things he wrote. I saw how the ideas that he put out there evolved as other people offered criticism and review. And all of these things that Roger tries to paint as some nefarious corporate takeover are all directly descended from Satoshi's own ideas. So like, where does this narrative that he's pushing come from?
Good question. And also Kyle, who's still going with this thread, I'm not going to go through all of it right now, also said that, quoted Satoshi, messages should not be recorded in the blockchain. And this was relating to the fact that people could put, inject kind of messages, as Satoshi himself did right at the very beginning of the blockchain, with the Times headline about the chancellor in the UK, doing stuff with quantitative easing and so on. But actually, I think what he means is you shouldn't put plain text in the blockchain. He's not saying, so it would be unwise to have permanently recorded plain text messages for everyone to see. He's talking about like putting hashes of messages in the blockchain. So go check out that mega thread. I thought it was really, really cool. Karl Torpey, and check out all his articles as well. He's also got a newsletter. Really, really like his work. No commercial consideration there. Now, fake news. Fake news. He wants to take this one. So this has to be one of the most misleading headlines I think we featured on the show today. JP Morgan integrates Zcash privacy tech into core and blockchain. Yeah, notice that little there. They smuggle that in. Yeah, the privacy tech. So not Zcash then. What would be another way of saying that? Anyone?
Zero knowledge proofs?
Yeah, maybe CK Snarks would have been a more accurate headline, but I guess you get more hits. Oh, you know why it is? Because they get more clicks if they use Zcash. Because it's
price pump.
Yeah, exactly. Now, of course, it's going to be easier to search if you put Zcash in there, because everyone's like, how do I mine Zcash? I put in like, how do I mine Zcash into Google? All right. So, I mean, I did read it, but it was just like a meh article where it's basic. I don't even know why JP Morgan even wants privacy on a blockchain unless they're just doing it to show that they can. I thought the whole point of these banks and stuff is that they want to know, and governments is they want to know where all the money's going and they want to know who's handling it. So who wants to deal with this?
No, they're completely in favor of privacy, but only for the executives, not for the pleb customers. Just for them, yeah.
So might we see in the future then, like just this elite class that are allowed to use the privacy technology and all the plebs have to use KYC coin?
I mean, maybe, but like the one thing that I find very interesting is how all these banks are constantly parading around like ZK snarks and zero cash as like the privacy mechanism, and how they're all tinkering with this, because like zero knowledge proofs are like it's a subject that's pretty far above my head, but from my understanding, it's a very new, very unproven and complicated form of cryptography. That as you look at how the trusted setup had to be done with zero cash, like they couldn't even figure out a way to implement this without it boiling down to having to trust the group of people actually setting the thing up. When we've had confidential transactions for a couple of years now, like it's been running on Monero just fine. Blockstream's actually implemented it in their Elements Alpha sidechain, and they've actually extended it for other assets and not just Bitcoin itself or whatever prime asset is there for the chain. So the technology to have privacy on a blockchain in a relatively scalable way, it's already here. Like, it's there. It's effectively, for all intents and purposes, production ready. So what is with these headlines that constantly tie into Ethereum or zero cash? There's always that bleed in to other shit coins out there that they have some financial interest in, instead of keeping it with the technology. Because if you're just strictly talking about the technology, it's here, it works, we have it already. So why are people playing these games trying to pump other coins out there that have inferior, untested methods of achieving this kind of privacy?
Also, it's like, congratulations, you added ZK snarks to a blockchain that no one uses, that only a few people control, and so it's very easy to update. Like, bravo. You've really achieved something. You took someone else's work and added it to something that no one cares about.
Yeah, I think you're right about this kind of just being like a pumpy article for Zcash, really. Like, it's like, don't even read it. It's just JP Morgan Zcash price pump. Like, that's all there is to it. Don't read anything more into it, because you'll see that it's just flaws every which way.
Yeah, so not so much fake news, just silly news, really. I don't know. I couldn't even be bothered to read it all the way to the end. Of course, there was an obligatory quote from Zuko. There's been extensive investment in research and proofs of concept for blockchain in enterprise over the last several years, and very little of it has reached enterprise value. Because that has been preventing larger adoption is the privacy problem, and we have a live solution. That privacy, call it alive. I mean, the difference really with CK over CT, which is used in Monero, that Monero is essentially the origin, but not, theoretically, you could go back through it and you could sort of reverse it. But what that does, of course, it's very, very hard to do, especially if you put a lot of mixing in when you, send a transaction. But what it does do, of course, is it creates an awful lot of blockchain bloat. The downside to using ZK snarks is, okay, you save on the blockchain size, but you have to have an awful lot of CPU and RAM in order to do it at all, which means virtually nobody uses it. And it's not mandatory on Zcash to use the privacy enhancement features, right? So everyone just uses the standard, Bitcoin features. And yet they're not trying to be like a digital gold, right? They're trying to be like a privacy type experiment. So
yeah, and I don't know if we wanted to save this, but Monero is more at the moment, even though Zcash it could more secure private. Yeah, am I getting cut off?
are we both lagging? Are we both good?
You sound fine now, but it's kind of getting a little laggy here and there.
All right.
Yeah, so anyway, I'll try to make it short, but Peter Todd said that, or he tweeted out a quote saying that Monero is more private because the amount of people, and now that ring signatures in Monero are mandatory, that means more people are using the privacy tech. And so there's a lot more privacy because you have more people involved. Whereas with Zcash, even though the ZK snarks are theoretically providing more privacy, there's a very small number of people using it, and so it's not as effective.
Good. Yeah, that's right. It's anonymity requires other people. Okay. And for the wrap up.
What's the name of the German intelligence agency? Because I think they're fucking with you guys.
Hey, maybe, am I still working or am I coming through?
Cutting in and out.
Cutting in and out.
They're getting their retribution from your comment the other day.
Indeed. He's probably just going through. But it's otherwise. Bye for now.
All right. Bye-bye, everybody.
Can you see all? Nope.
I still see that we're live.
Done or not, I don't think YouTube got the kill signal.
Internet.
But guys, don't worry, because my Gigablock program worked just fine. Don't you worry.
Oh, that'll be constant.
Did it go off yet? No, it's still live.
I think we're going to have our longest episode ever, folks, and it's just going to keep streaming until YouTube says it should stop.
Yeah, I don't know how we could cut it off.
Nothing to see here. Everything is okay. It's totally fine.